Hello friends, in this video, I will tell you very interesting things about your body fat, and why it's not about beauty, and why it's so important to have a low percentage of fat and the maximum possible in your physiology. What diseases excess fat can cause, about which you did not know, and what processes fat responds to, and how to transform fat from bad to good in your body. So hit like and watch this video. We typically view fat as a storage site in the body, and a fat cell, an understanding, well, I hope, you are smart, educated. A fat cell is just such a cell in which there is a lot of fat. In fact, there is an understanding that fat is actually different in the body. And there are 3 letter B's. These are 3 types of fat. The first type of fat, the one you don't like in the mirror, is white fat. The second type of fat is the fat that we often see in larger volumes in young men. This is brown fat, brown. And the third type of fat is called beige fat, beige. What is the fundamental difference between these fats? It all depends on what they secrete. Here's white fat, it secretes leptin. Leptin is a plus. Brown fat, leptin is a minus. That is, it's practically non-existent. But white fat does not secrete thermogenin. Thermogenin, don't be scared of the word. But brown fat does secrete thermogenin, thermogenin. Fat, they say, does not heat, precisely because of the absence of thermogenin, practically full, in white fat. It does not heat us particularly, but it participates in thermoregulation. Brown fat, thanks to thermogenin, does not let our youngster freeze. In the adult organism, we also have it. The fat is primarily located under the skin, surrounding large blood vessels and the kidneys. In reality, it is difficult to freeze kidneys. Our cheeks contain brown fat. And what is brown fat? Brown fat is when a person has watched this video and tried to turn their white fat into brown. That is, it's the bad white fat that has partially turned into brown fat under the influence of certain factors. Watch until the end, you'll understand which ones. What is needed to be a healthy person? Correct, regularly check your health. And one of the simplest ways to check your health is to do a checkup in the BioCheck service. My service allows you to take the required tests from the comfort of your home at your convenience. At the same time, absolutely free of charge, at the cost of regular tests, at the price of any laboratory, to get an online consultation from a top specialist from my team. Thanks to this service, you can detect a disease at an early stage, see what deficiencies are in your body, correct some disease that you sometimes don't even suspect. The most important thing in the end is to be super productive. So the BioCheck service is for successful people who care about their health. The link to the BioCheck project is under this video. The first thing to remember is that 50 signaling molecules, imagine 50 signaling molecules, are produced by our fat cells, fabric, and through these signaling molecules, a huge number of different processes in the organism are regulated. We are used to thinking that it's just fat and it's just a source of energy. No. 50 signal molecules. What do they regulate? For example, your appetite, your metabolism, your immune response, systemic inflammation. That's why people, when they become more corpulent, they become, for example, more allergic. A simple scientific fact that says that a fat cell called an adipocyte can increase physiologically. Its normal value, how much it can increase if memory does not change, is about 10 to 15% of your body mass. That is, 10 to 15% of your body mass can grow due to hypertrophy. That is, the enlargement of a fat cell. Around the adipocytes, there are immature adipocytes, which under the influence of what you eat, move a little, have a huge amount of excess calories, turn into mature adipocytes. Mature. Therefore, when your trainer tells you that the amount of fat in your body does not change, it is the number of adipocytes that changes. And that's why it's very important not to overeat fat, because a mature adipocyte renews itself every 10 years. That is, the fat that you have somewhere, if we grab it, it probably holds a piece of the burger that you stuffed there 10 years ago. A very slowly renewing fabric. And it's important to know and understand that if you've ever overeaten, the number of fat cells in your body has increased, their potential for accumulation becomes greater. There are many such examples. How many of you have a friend who used to be thin, fit, ate? His genetics allowed him to eat everything. Then eventually he still overeats himself a belly, after which he remains like that. And he can't just lose weight once and return to that fit state. Undoubtedly, lifestyle hormones that change over the years. But it is precisely the overeating of this excess weight that leads to the fact that you have a tendency to gain weight. Friends, hello. I want to remind you that I have Ipsum vitamins, which I created with love, first of all, for my family, for my friends, and now for my child. Because in the near future, possibly when this video is already out, there will be a children's line and sports nutrition, including I plan to do. I try to choose the best raw materials, take the best production technologies, and at my own factory, which is located in a special economic zone in Dubna, I make vitamins for you, which I am proud of, and for which I answer with my reputation, and therefore my surname and painting are on every jar. Friends, thank you for trusting. Thank you for tens of thousands of positive reviews, for the ratings you give our vitamins, and for believing and trusting. The most important thing, an achievement in life for me, is your health. Be happy. The link to the vitamins is under this video. Fat can also be ectopic. It's a separate type of fat. And what is ectopic fat? It's fat that is found where there should either be none or a minimal amount. The liver, for example, or muscles. This is a sign that you are indeed a sick person, and therefore, fatty liver disease is a sign that something is going wrong. You need to lose weight. Now we present a fat cell and a very important mechanism that you should know about. The fat cell, it is penetrated by blood vessels. It is surrounded by lymphatic channels. And when you have an increase in volume, there's a lack of nutrition of the adipocyte, which reacts by releasing inflammatory signal molecules. That is, an increase in the volume of the adipocyte will lead to inflammation. That's why if you have systemic inflammation in your body, your first step should be weight loss, because inflammation plus bad lipidogram, which overweight people often have, sorry for this word, plus heredity plus high pressure, which overweight people often have, plus bad nutrition, which is why you became overweight. Bad nutrition, all this leads to atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis, therefore, this pathogenesis, this mechanism of disease development in the body, can be prevented. Therefore, when they say that I am comfortable at this weight, I am comfortable for my teddy bear to walk with a big belly. When a woman talks about her man like this, and are you comfortable with him having factors that will lead to you being a widow in 45 years? Of course not. Therefore, beauty is not the first priority, longevity is. There are nations that have a huge body mass and good genetics and still have a good cholesterol level. That's their peculiarity. There are nationalities, there are races that seem to have a healthy appearance externally. For example, take India. There is a huge number of people, thin, fit, yet they have a pathologically repulsive endocrine system. A large number of diseases while the nation is generally thin. This means that in the case of an endocrinologist, it's not always worth judging by appearances. Indeed, there are people for whom a high percentage of subcutaneous fat cells is normal. There are a huge number of athletes who are naturally large, but at the same time they are enduring strong. For example, there are fighters, heavyweight boxers. But despite their lifestyle, yes, and indeed, the white fat partially turned into brown fat, but they will always be full. I'm not saying that you need to have six-pack abs. You need to have a normal percentage of fat in your physiology to the maximum. What does my physiology depend on? Why is it comfortable for me to maintain a weight of 100 kilograms? Because I am the son of my parents, and we need to see what my ancestors were like. This also has a big influence on me. The second important factor I often talk about is the level of your mother's adrenal hormones. When you are in her womb, which triggers the launch of certain adaptive mechanisms that make you more prone to gaining excess weight. Why? Because gaining excess weight is an adaptive mechanism to bad factors in the external environment. And when your mother went to work and they, bled her there, The body, through hormones, gave a signal to activate certain genes in the fetus, and the fetus began to prepare for the fact that the environment there is not very good. The third factor, the child was born, and you didn't feed him correctly from the start. Teaching proper eating habits to children in their early years is crucial. And any predisposition, it can be realized, and it may not be realized. We often see this in the effect of separated twins. When twins are separated at birth, one grows up in a family where he is properly fed. The other grows up in a family where he is improperly fed, and he does not engage in sports. They meet at 14, people with identical genetics. One is insanely fat with a huge amount of diseases. The other is not. That's why genetics is genetics, but there is also epigenetics. It's about your capacity to control and manipulate. What is the fundamental difference between white fat and brown fat? Remember, I had a great episode about our friends' mitochondria. So there are very few of these in white fat. And basically all fat is essentially 3 glycerides. In brown fat, there's not much fat there, but there are a lot of mitochondria. There are a lot of mitochondria, our power plants, which produce energy for us. So answer me this, if you remember my episode about mitochondria. Under the influence of what do mitochondria become larger and they become healthier? Correct, during physical activity. That's why we can create brown fat under the influence of physical work. In recent scientific studies, they are so contradictory. They say that there's a certain protein that is produced during physical activity, specifically in mitochondria, and it stimulates the transition of white fat into brown. Also, this is sometimes highlighted during thermo-intervention, that is, when we go to a sauna, a bathhouse, pour ourselves with cold water. All this also helps us to convert white fat into brown. By the way, Wim Hof, the guy who doesn't get cold, we should take a biopsy of his fat to see maybe all his fat is actually brown. That's why he doesn't get cold. Friends, I hope today's short lecture was very useful. Write in the comments, what do you think? Is a fat person always a sick person? Or come to that everyone has their own fat percentage. You started to relate a little differently to this. The thing is, the body having a certain percentage of fat that you've reached will always strive for it. And if I gain a comfortable 100 kilograms for reasons that I mentioned today, when I reduce this weight, my body will speed up my metabolism, let's say, stimulate my appetite, and I will want to eat more, and it will be harder for me to lose weight further. On the contrary, when you are bulking up, the gains won't let you overdo it. The more you gain, the harder it is for you to gain further, because your body reduces your appetite through the same leptin. And you don't really want to eat. You can't start eating, and it tries to return you to those comfortable ones. That's why my advice is to know your comfortable genetic weight and try to engage in bodybuilding around it. If you want to change yourself to the maximum extent possible, it won't happen in a month. In addition to needing to reach a certain percentage of fat, you also need to maintain it. And remember the speed of update. Therefore, a minimum of 10 years, if you keep yourself in very good shape, will allow you to at least fully overcome this tendency towards fullness. Therefore, these knowledge, these tools, which unfortunately are found in those areas of science where we, people from the fitness industry, rarely visit. On this topic, by the way, there is a very interesting book by Professor Pokrovsky, a professor of the RUDN department, so I recommend everyone to educate themselves, all my subscribers, and not only because of that, friends. Have a good day. Thank you for watching to the end, and don't forget to like.